The story of Ruth, how God turned her pain into purpose. A powerful journey of faith. Have you ever felt like your life was falling apart? Like everything familiar had been stripped away, and all that was left was pain and confusion? Imagine being a young woman, far from home, with no husband, no money, and no clear future. But instead of giving up, she made one choice that changed everything. This is the powerful story of Ruth. A story of deep loss, brave loyalty, and how God can take the most broken pieces of our lives and build something beautiful. Tragedy in Moab. The story begins in a time of famine. A man named Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their 2 sons leave their home in Bethlehem and move to Moab, a foreign land, hoping to survive. But tragedy strikes. First, Elimelech dies. Then, Naomi's 2 sons, who had married Moabite women named Orpah and Ruth, also died. Naomi is left alone in a land that's not hers, with 2 grieving daughters-in-law, and no hope in sight. Naomi's heart is crushed. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 13, she says, "The Lord's hand has turned against me." She decides to turn to Bethlehem and tells Orpah and Ruth to stay in Moab, to start over and remarry. Orpah listens and leaves. But Ruth does something unforgettable. Ruth's bold decision. As Naomi tries to send Ruth away, Ruth responds with words so powerful, they echo through history. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." Ruth chooses faith over fear, loyalty over comfort, love over security. She walks away from everything she's ever known to stand by Naomi and to follow a God she's only just begun to believe in. This was not a small act, this was a courageous step of faith. A humble beginning in Bethlehem. When Ruth and Naomi arrived in Bethlehem, they had nothing. No land, no food, no man to protect or provide for them. But Ruth doesn't wait around. She goes into the fields to gather leftover grain just to feed Naomi and herself. This was back-breaking work, done by the poor and the desperate. But Ruth works hard, and it doesn't go unnoticed. In Ruth chapter 2, verses 3, we're told that, as it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Boaz is a wealthy and kind man, and as God would have it, he's a relative of Naomi's late husband. Coincidence? No. Providence. Kindness from Boaz. Boaz sees Ruth's dedication, humility, and courage. He tells his workers to treat her well. He makes sure she's safe. He even leaves extra grain behind for her to gather. In Ruth chapter 2, verses 12, Boaz says something that reveals how deeply God is at work behind the scenes. "May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Boaz sees Ruth not just as a foreign widow, but as a woman of faith and honor. A bold proposal. As time goes on, Naomi sees that Boaz might be the one God has chosen to redeem their family name and care for Ruth. So, in a bold and strategic move, Naomi instructs Ruth to approach Boaz at the threshing floor. and ask him to spread the corner of his garment over her, a symbolic way of asking him to be her protector, her husband. Ruth obeys. In the dead of night, she quietly asks Boaz for this act of redemption. Boaz is moved. He says in Ruth chapter 3, verse 10, "The Lord bless you. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier." But there is a complication. Another man has the first right to marry Ruth. Still, Boaz promises to settle the matter, saying, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will do it." A glorious redemption. Boaz goes to the town gate, gathers the elders, and arranges everything according to the law. When the other man declines, Boaz steps up. He marries Ruth. This woman who came to Bethlehem with nothing now becomes part of a family, redeemed and honored. But the story doesn't end there. In Ruth chapter 4, verse 13, we read, "So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. The Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. They named the child Obed. Obed becomes the father of Jesse, and Jesse becomes the father of David, Israel's greatest king. Yes, Ruth, the Moabite widow, becomes the great-grandmother of King David and part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. From famine to fullness, from sorrow to legacy, from outsider to chosen vessel of God's plan. So, what does this story mean for us today? It reminds us that no matter how broken our beginnings, God can write a beautiful ending. You may feel like Ruth right now, empty, unsure, facing loss, rejection, or loneliness. But remember this: Ruth didn't let her past define her future. She didn't wait for the perfect moment. She stepped out in faith, and God honored that faith with more than she could have imagined. Romans chapter 8, verses 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Your pain has purpose. Your steps of faith are not forgotten. God sees your heart, your loyalty, your obedience. And just like Ruth, he can take your ashes and give you beauty. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs hope. And in the comments, tell us, what's one area in your life where you're trusting God for a turnaround? And if you haven't already, subscribe for more powerful Bible stories that remind you, you are never alone and God is always at work. Because when God writes your story, every chapter, even the hard ones, lead to glory.